Hello, welcome to the latest edition of the Death Labs podcast here, hosted by Netenrich, where we talk about all things threat research and detection engineering. My name is John Bambenek. I'm the principal threat hunter here at Netenrich. I am joined today by John Giglio for SADA. So introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about what SADA does and what you do for SADA.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Good to be talking with everyone. I'm John Giglio. I am the Director of Cloud Security here at SADA. And SADA is a huge partner with Google Cloud. And what we do is we help our customers to be successful and to achieve their transformation goals with the power of Google Cloud. My particular focus in that area is all around security, and myself and my team and just helping our customers operate securely on Google Cloud and do things in the proper manner, the right way to go about securing your cloud environment. That's what we do. So thanks for having me.
Gotcha. And describe like what's your class of customers? I mean, not specific names, right? To kind of calibrate. It's like, who is this messaging geared for? We talking small business, medium-sized enterprises, public sector? Who do you normally do business with?
Yeah, go with yes and. So we do all of those. We definitely do small, medium, large businesses, enterprises, as well as public sector. So we're talking to all of those different types of businesses, and some of the use cases obviously vary a little bit depending on the size of the organization, certainly. But yeah, SADA does business across the board. We're pretty widespread when it comes to segments as well. We do lots with healthcare, retail, like I said, public sector, and any size organization. So yeah, we're happy to talk to anybody about using Google Cloud to be successful.
Gotcha. So, like I said, when I think about like customers who are investing in cloud and kind of the overall digital transformation, security's kind of lagged that somewhat. I've talked previous episodes. I mean, part adjunct faculty, so I'm involved in higher education as well, and how we bring people into the security industry of saying, okay, I'm going to airdrop you into the level 1 SOC, where after getting a bachelor's and master's in your GSEC or Security Plus, we tell you to turn off your brain for 6 months and apply these procedures for level 1 SOC, where you're just a human grep filter, right? So, talk about like transforming security operations, right? Because particularly like level 1 SOC sucks, right? How can we make, the experience of particularly entry-level security professionals less miserable, so we produce less whiskey swilling misanthropes?
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, it's I don't know that we've 100% solved it yet, but I certainly think that we can get there. I think we're well on our way to getting there. I think to your point, a lot of it is about reducing that toil. So I think part of what makes that level 1 job so awful is just, like I said, turn off your brain, right? It's just toil. You're not really doing anything that you have to think about or that challenges your intellect in any way, shape, or form, right? You're just here's your playbook, here's your monitor, right? Go click this button 100 times or whatever, like rinse and repeat. So I think eliminating some of that toil is the first step to making those folks' lives a whole lot better. And I think automation is a big key and a big part of being able to do that, and letting the robots and the machines do the things that the robots and the machines are good at doing, and letting the humans do what humans are good at doing.
Gotcha. So like what new approaches do you envision that we're doing, or how can people succeed? Because we talked about automation, I don't know, before the pandemic. So like my sense of time is broken. Nobody remembers exactly how long the pandemic was. I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. There's always been this notion of, hey, there's not enough people, so let's automate all the things. And certainly there's a new round of buzz with ChatGPT, and I don't know exactly how new language learning models are, but now like automation is now top of mind because yet there's another new blinky light that people are interested in. Like how to go about doing that safely, because you know, like I said, there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. And I think in the case of the target breach of 10 some odd years ago, that's a case of doing it wrong. Too many alerts. So you ignored the real because there was lots of false positives until there wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's still a pretty big problem, unfortunately. But I think when it comes to automation, I think the key is to really just start to understand what you can automate with. Like find the low hanging fruit. Right. So because there's a ton of things that can be automated. And to your point as well, like you can break a lot of stuff. Not that I've ever done anything like that. Definitely never broken anything with a script or trying to automate something. Never.
No, you don't really work in technology until you've broken production at least once, right?
That's right.
Until then, you're basically an intern, right? You could be a 35-year-old intern, but until you've broken production, you've not really come into your own.
Yeah, when you get that feeling in your gut of like, oh no, what did I just do? And you know
Yeah.
that it's broken and you know exactly how bad it's broken. Yeah, that's definitely a good learning experience for sure. So, but yeah, so you can do a lot of things with automation without getting to that breaking point. And there's some low hanging fruit that you can automate. And I'll give you an example of that. So, you think about just bringing in additional context. So a lot of times you get an alert, right? You've got some basic information. Maybe you've got a username or an IP address or some other little bit of information, but you may not have the whole picture or the whole story. And so, as an analyst, your first thing that you're going to go and do is, okay, what other context can I bring in about this particular alert? So, automation can be extremely helpful there because you can automate a lot of that collection that you would normally do. So, if you're going to go take that IP address and put it into, I don't know, a handful of different threat intel sources or something like that, right? And that would be your first step. Maybe you take an external IP, like, all right, let's see if anybody else knows about malicious activity associated with this IP address. That's something that you can very easily automate and save yourself some time. It's not a ton of time, but it's time. And if you do that over and over again, right, you automate a few of those things. Now you're saving a whole lot of time. So I think context to me is a very kind of low hanging fruit area where we can gain a lot from automation without taking action or taking any kind of making any kind of changes that could potentially break something, which is where my brain I know used to always go when I thought about automation. It's like, oh yeah, let's automate the response to the alert, right? The actual action of maybe locking somebody out or shutting down a machine if it's some type of ransomware or something like that, right? We need to quickly take some sort of response action. That I think is where you can get into a whole lot more trouble. But I think you can gain a lot from automation just with context and bringing in additional context before you get to those kind of breaking changes.
Right. So I said, and we've all been there, analyzing or responding to an incident and the 50 browser tabs of just copying and pasting to, okay, figure out what all the other things and what context I can find and go into VirusTotal or going to, whatever services to enrich that all have APIs that can all be brought to I see, I'm hearing the voice of my CISO who hates the phrase single pane of glass. But it's really true, right? It's
Yeah.
To make the RAM on my laptop accessible again, so I'm not running 32 gigabytes of RAM just in browser tabs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
So true. Single pane of glass
yeah,
is a term that gets a bad rap, but it is important. But yeah, unfortunately, it gets abused. So
right. I need a portal to manage my portals, right?
right.
But I guess even a 5-year-old dated expression, right? Nobody talks about portals anymore, but the principle is still the same. So, I mean, speaking of analysis, right, kind of talking specifically to threat detection, investigation, responsive, like digging into something. So how are you and your customers improving, their threat hunting techniques? A lot of people talk about threat hunting has existed since, I don't know, Mandiant coined the term over a decade ago. How are you deploying those techniques? How are your customers benefiting from them?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the biggest benefits when it comes to threat hunting that we see with the customers that we work with and some of the technologies that I'm sure we're gonna get into with Netenrich and Chronicle and some of those kind of back end technologies. But I think one of the biggest benefits when it comes to threat hunting is just that time to response, time to get meaningful data back from the system. I think the old thought there is like you build your query and then go grab a cup of coffee, right? I'm sure you've heard that before. Just wait for the system to process through all of these massive amounts of logs that it has to go crawl through to give you back some results. And then if your query was incorrect or it didn't quite give you what you wanted, right? Now you kind of rinse and repeat. You go do that process all over again. So you end up spending a lot of time waiting. It's funny sometimes when people ask me what I do, I say I wait on computers all day long. Um, but that I think is a huge value area, is just reducing that time of investigation, the time spent waiting on the computers, and the technology pieces. So like the Chronicle backend allows our customers to really get some value from that and be able to quickly get meaningful data back out of their searches and not have to go take a coffee break every time they want to learn something about an incident.
No, I think that's absolutely true. Is I kind of come back to we're on a race of the clock, so to speak, right? Is I don't know the Verizon data breach report is out yet. It probably will be by the time this podcast airs, right? And one of the metrics I always look at is just dwell time, or whatever they're calling it these days, of how long somebody's in an environment before they're detected. And some of our architectural, limitations and older technologies is, goes into that is if it's computationally expensive to search, then I can't really automate it, or automate very many of them. I can't,
Yeah.
I can run, dozens of searches instead of hundreds or thousands, right? And attacker techniques are always evolving. So the speed really matters, especially if you want to detect it early on versus ransomware. Ransomware is easy to detect. The attacker eventually lets you, not that eventually, pretty quickly lets you know, hey, I've got you, pay me. It's that their entire model of the attack is to let you know that
Right.
they've taken your stuff, right? So we don't need detection techniques for that. We need detection techniques for things earlier in the attack life cycle of privilege escalation or PowerShell misuse or lateral movement, or, I mean, ideally initial access. But there's so many
Yeah.
different ways to even go about that. Is it's if you get it early, you save the millions of dollars in cryptocurrency ransoms. Or I don't know that I'm sure Krebs still sells this, right? There used to be stickers or shirts that says Brian Krebs is my intrusion detection system, right? As people learned of their
Yeah.
breach from Brian Krebs. I'm sure he probably still sells it, but as a
Probably.
former
Yeah.
student, had that sticker on his laptop, and it just that visual is coming to mind. So,
Yeah.
um, is let's talk about in the past few years, kind of what difficulties have you had in finding specific threat types and impacts, and where are the problems that we're looking to solve with that fast search? I mean, beyond what I just editorialized, because like I said before we got on the air, is I have a fair to middling level of success in not talking and letting the guests talk.
Yeah. No, it's all very good. And yeah, that's definitely not the way that you want to find out about something in your environment. It's from Brian Krebs. Um, but yeah, that's always sort of the challenge, is where do you get your threat intel from? So we're very fortunate to have Netenrich and Google and now Mandiant, which I know you mentioned, to provide those sources of threat intel. and to help our customers understand, okay, this is something that's actionable, right? This is something that we should be doing something about. It's credible, threat intelligence data. I don't have to sort through my threat intel data. So you mentioned like a portal for your portal, right? Threat intel for your threat intel of, okay, how reliable is this? Well, who did this come from? And, are they pretty accurate? Are they normally, do I spend a lot of time chasing my tail when I go after these? So having that confidence in your intel sources, I think is very helpful for our customers as well, to be able to know that, okay, this is legitimate, and hopefully not get a bunch of false positives either, right? That was always one of my pet peeves was, you spend a lot of time chasing false positives or something that you think is legitimate or looks really interesting from a security professional's point of view, but could be bad from a company point of view. We always think those are the fun ones. Like, we want to go chase down all the bad guys. But you can spend a lot of time wasted on that kind of stuff. So having good intelligence data and having a good understanding of what do I actually need to care about and what do I not, like what is going to cause me to chase my tail. Having that information in there, I think, is critical. And so, the way that we see that in the Chronicle world and with Netenrich is we provide a lot of the out of the box rules that will take the information from these various different threat intel sources, couple that with information that we can learn from our customers about their environment, and put together a set of meaningful rules that will alert them and include the context that I mentioned earlier. So to try and save their analysts, save their security folks time when it comes to responding to an alert. So I think our customers see a lot of value there with those kind of curated rule sets where we're taking all of these different bits of data and putting it all together, doing some of that automation that we talked about previously, and really just helping cut down on the time that they spend chasing false positives.
Right. And like I said, it kind of, I don't know, surprises me, right? I think it's an institutional bias in our industry for most people of against false positives. We'll tolerate false negatives. We almost believe is, yeah, we're going to miss things. That's okay. Just don't make me do work unnecessarily or raise things up the flagpole that, I say are high priority issues that turn out not to be. That always burns you, right? And I've noticed this in providing threat intel feeds also is, you're not evaluated on comprehensiveness because nobody knows how to measure that. You're evaluated on false positives. Again, not even really contextual information, right? So, and very few of these providers you mentioned, right? Threat intel providers is, I noticed kind of a wide variety of people who provide it, and most don't really give any context. They're like, hey, this IP address is bad. Maybe you can infer based on the provider of it, particularly in the open source realm where it's just like, here's a bucket of indicators.
Right.
Great.
What do I do with them?
Right. So, there's a couple of companies that have just created an entire business model of taking all the indicators and saying, okay, these are the ones you actually should block. These are interesting for enrichment. That we're also creating some of the same kind of mechanisms here. Well, less from the blocking because, we're really the threat detection piece of it, not the SOAR of it, but eventually creating that end-to-end pipeline as well for those who want to actually action things. And I guess since we, broached it and danced around it, right, of what's your feeling about automated response, the SOAR of taking automation that final mile, right? Automating analysis is great. Do you see a path in the near future to automate away at least these simple threats that exist where, we can go from point A to point B analysis quickly to say, block this IP address, isolate this VM, reimage, kill a process, whatever, because we've been talking about SOAR for a while. as an industry? Are we going to get
Yeah.
there where we reduce the level of fires we need to fight?
Yeah. I think we're gonna get there. At least I like to think that we're gonna get there. I absolutely see it. Like you said, I think initially I see it as those simpler use cases, right? Because you do have to be careful with it, and we talked about that already, right? To those breaking response changes, but there are definitely things that can be done and should be done quickly and with an automated response in order to be most effective. So you mentioned ransomware, right? So, and the way the way you don't want to find out about ransomware is when you get the note. So if we have, some sort of automated response that can prevent it from happening in the first place, and if that can happen at any hour of the day, so that my on call at 2 a.m. happens to not wake up to their phone message or whatever, right? To log in and go ahead and take whatever responsive action we would want them to take, or whatever that may be. Like if we can automate that response action so that we don't even have to think about it, I definitely see us getting there with the tools like SOAR. There is certainly some maturity that has to happen first. I think we sort of already talked about it too. Like the ability to break stuff, you have to be really careful. It's really a crawl, walk, run type of process to get there. But I absolutely think we can get there. I think companies like Netenrich, like SADA, right? We can help our customers get there as well. We can help them through that crawl, walk, run process of understanding what are the things that can be automated that we can get to the point where we have that fully automated response in place. But it's definitely a process and does take some time to get there. But do I think we can get there? Absolutely. I think as an industry, we are headed the right direction. Probably going to take some time to get there. Things will obviously get easier as tools get better and mature a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, I think we have to get there. Honestly, um, I don't see any way around it.
No, I mean the scale of the problem is only increasing, right? And yeah, like I said, you mentioned like the automation creating it new and exciting opportunities to break production, right? As I go back to some machine learning research. I'm a PhD student in cybersecurity machine learning, writing my thesis, and created a machine learning model on malicious domain detection. And then the pandemic hit, and that model started detecting government entities, particularly public health agencies, creating domains just haphazardly and immediately because governments that are very bureaucratic and highly regimented change control threw the book out the window, says get stuff out immediately, and started deploying infrastructure the same way criminals did, is just rapidly immediate operationalizing, right? Forget about IPv6 and DNSSEC and all of the hardening thing government entities specifically do.
Yeah,
Where my model, because it was deployed globally, started blocking public health authorities. I'm like, that's a class of a false positive I never thought I would reach in my career of disrupting public health authorities in a global pandemic.
yeah,
Halfway across the. It's like now I'm really coming into my own, where I'm a geopolitical threat actor unintentionally. So it's these systems can fail, particularly as our own behavior and our own, like the blue team, or just technology users change how we operate also. And that's,
yeah,
I don't know, it's one of the great reasons I got into security. Things are always changing, so there's
yeah,
always something new. I don't need to research the same threat for years and years and years and become an expert in. I think Tretbot's gone, or Conti. There's people like specialize in a couple of families and just ride that for years. And I just get bored with it pretty quickly. It's like, I know all I really need to know about this. Now let's just block it, detect it, move on to any of the other hundreds of threat actors and malware families and campaigns I need to research. And the ones that we don't even really know about because nobody's brought them to the surface yet. So
yeah.
I think one of the biggest revolutionary aspects. I hate that word used in technology. Oh, this is revolutionary, because really we're just doing the same stuff. It's just over the internet now. But one of the things that really changes a lot of things is just the scale of data that exists. And I'm sure that it's still in best practice guides. Like in the start of my career, I helped write best practice guides for system network administration, what eventually became security administration, of, hey, you need to do manual review of logs. In the 90s, that wasn't possible. Now, I mean, you're talking about megabytes of logs in the 90s. Now you're talking about terabytes and petabytes.
Yeah.
Good luck. There's
Yeah.
not enough people to just do that log review. So that's where automation goes there. But how are we solving that kind of complexity of the volume of data to really at least do automated analytics to pull out the signal from the noise, because there's a lot of noise.
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely is. And absolutely, I mean, the volume has just exploded. Um, Everywhere. Even, I can even look at like just personally and the amount of data that I have, even just like photos and videos, right? Like, so even just as a person in today's world, like the amount of data that we generate now, let alone businesses and all the data and stuff that they're processing and the different systems that are online now. And yeah, to your earlier point of things that people are just throwing out there because they have to, because the business says, get it done. We need to have this right now. And all of those things start generating this data and this information that, yeah, somebody's got to go look at, or something, right? So the ability of your systems when it comes to the analytics piece to sort through this massive volume of data that is only going to get larger, is going to be incredibly important for our customers. And I think again, this is where we're very fortunate to have a backend like Chronicle that is really purpose built for that kind of large volume of data, and to not have to take coffee breaks when you go to look across that data or to analyze across it, or run those analytics that you need to run. And so I think that's huge for folks. That's huge for a lot of people that we talk to. Is they see the problem too. They see like, hey, my data is only getting bigger. Do you have a system that can help me understand it? Run analytics across it, and of course, we can say, yeah, absolutely. We have Chronicle with Netenrich, and we can absolutely help with those mountains of data that you have and that are just continuing to get bigger. So
No, absolutely. I'm only getting older, right? You can tell from the gray and the beard, right? And I can only do so many coffee breaks without having, heart arrhythmias now, because I'm reaching that age. So, I need water breaks, but, I need to calm down on the coffee breaks.
yeah,
So, that kind of gets into, I mean, one key feature I'll just touch upon, because I mentioned it a lot. It's like one of the biggest it's not, I don't know that's an innovation. It's just the thing that really helps with Chronicle specifically is the pre-ingest parsing of everything into a uniform data model, because
yeah,
that's what makes it work, right? You can do it all on the back end, but it's just going through the exercise of a PhD in machine learning. It's like, oh, I've got to sit there and deal with all these edge cases because the data is encoded any old which way. It's really just normalizing it to the same, so that a login event on Windows and Linux and AWS and GCP and Salesforce and QuickBooks and all of the various things is all described the same way all the time. Now
yeah,
you can do things like behavioral analytics versus, because I can look at login behavior across, cloud SaaS platforms, on-prem, and just general cloud infrastructure almost. And I'm sure this is true. Probably most of your customers have migrated on-prem Exchange to either Google Workspaces or Office 365, right?
yeah,
And, I'm people, I guess, mostly law firms who run Exchange on-prem. but that's more or less gone away, where now all of that behavior is through cloud APIs instead of Windows event logs.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so
and they all look different. They all have different formats, right? To your point. So yeah, if you had to go through each one individually, you would, you'd never get anywhere. So you'd never be able to write a rule across those different sources and have it look the same because yeah, your SaaS app, your Salesforce, your on-premise systems, your firewalls, everything has its own format. That of course they like to change from time to time as well, just to keep us all employed. But it's huge being able to put it all into that UDM format and be able to write those rules. Yeah, it's massive.
right, and this, I don't need anything increasing my job security at this point. I've got enough work to do, right?
Right.
At some point in my 40-year career in this industry, and I'm only halfway through it, I'd like to solve a problem before something is made worse on me, by some external entity. Just saying, let's employ this technology elsewhere, right? That doesn't really work where it's deployed now, but hey, let's create self-driving cars where image recognition is flawed, and now we deal with life safety risks instead of just goofy facial recognition oddities. So like kind of pivoting back to that, it's like, why is data analytics so important? Like, how can we leverage this stuff to improve security operations? To kind of go back to where I started, how can we make the level 1 and really level 2 and level 3 SOC life suck less?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just really that elimination of the toil, those tasks, like I was talking about in the beginning. And I don't want to rehash something we've kind of already talked about, but I think that's how we make people's lives better, is put more of the focus on the skills that they have and the tasks that those skills are necessary for. So you can create a team of almost software engineers for security use cases, right? You can have folks spending time on tweaking and updating and creating those automations that we talked about that are helping everybody out. They're helping reduce toil for everyone on the team. And that's a totally different skill set. That's not a typical skill set that you would see on a security team, at least not historically. I mean, it's obviously becoming more and more common now, but the programming mindset, the systems thinking, the code first approach and mentality is still very new in the security space. But those are the things that really help reduce that toil and make everyone's lives a whole lot better. And I think that's a big part of the transformation that we see as well, is that sort of shift from the focus on just manual work, like you mentioned, right? That kind of stare at a monitor all day, turn your brain off, right? The shift from that into work that people want to do. The stuff that's fun to do, like you said it, right? Make an impact, right? You want to make an impact at some point in your career, right? On doing something that before it changes for you, or before it's changed for you. So I think that's what people want to do, and that's what we want to help them and help our customers enable their teams to be able to do, is focus more on that meaningful work, less on the toil, and utilize the systems and the tools that we know are available today to help them get there.
I think, yeah, and like I said, it kind of goes into like I said, a passion of mine. Let's just find something new out there, and it's easy to get caught in a rut, especially if you're in firefighter mode. It's the best thing I've done for my career that really kind of vaulted me forward is about 10 years in, for reasons unconnected to, professional life, more or less took a break for like a year and a half of the industry. It was still working, money was coming in, but I was out of the trenches in firefighting, for a year and a
Yeah.
half. So I come back fresh and be like, what do I want to go do with myself and have the intellectual space for some creativity, without being like, I've got to go through the grind of tickets or, the grind of Jira, or pick our system du jour of, shoveling work at us faster than we're ever going to be able to do it, is to be able to have that at a manageable level, just to have, I think in psychology, be relatively in a flow state where your mind is able to work and you're able to be creative. Because if you're doing threat hunting, right, that's creative. There's the genre of threat hunting of, oh, look, Palo Alto Unit 42 or Netenrich or Mandiant or whatever did this threat report. Let's Control C and Control V indicators in our SIM or in Chronicle or whatever to go hunt in my environment. I mean, that's not hunting. It's important because somebody's going to ask, hey, this new threat report's out. Has it hit me? Okay, you got to check that. But there's no intellectual thought in there, because it's just Control C, Control V work.
Yeah.
But
work that can be automated, right? That's Toil. Perfect example.
Well, and I don't even know where we are as an industry. There used to be an attempt to sit there and just automate reading the PDF threat reports and pull out what's actionable and do that. And there were tools for that for a while. And I don't think it ever got any farther than just mining for indicators. But the same thing is like, nobody's got time to go read 30-page threat reports. Just give me the things that I Control C, Control V now because an executive read it, or an executive read the executive summary of it and asked me if this impacts us. And few of us like writing reports. There's work that we're doing internal of just using Chat GPT to do the long form writing executives like, because it's that communication gap between, okay, this is the technical stuff. They want to hear it in business terms. Let's create a machine with a language learning model to turn tech into business. And there's some interesting things that we're coming up with to automate, the time it takes to write things, which is never, it's not fun for a lot of people. We're notoriously poor communicators as an industry, outside of ourselves. Good drinkers, less communication, less so.
Right. No, it's true. I mean, you're spot on. It's we bring people into our organizations to do meaningful work. I mean, that's what they want to do. That's what we want them to do, right? Like I don't really want to hire anybody to go do the same thing over and over again and hate their life, right? I want people that can understand my business, that can think creatively, innovate, right? See the problems in the organization and help me solve them in maybe new and creative ways using new technologies like you talked about. Maybe that's Chat GPT or something else. But I mean, that's one of the major benefits, I think, of this type of transformation we're talking about. Security operations is getting rid of that stuff that just nobody wants to do. It's not fun. It can definitely be automated, and your people can focus on that skill work, that meaningful work that no robot can do for you, because it requires intimate knowledge of your business and your customers and your there's so many things that, like, having that understanding of your organization is going to be like, you're the only person that can do it, right? I can even as an outside consultant, like, I can come in and make recommendations to you, but I don't know the ins and outs of your business. I don't know Joe and Bob and Sue and all the folks like in your business that the politics, the internal stuff, all of those aspects of getting things done in an organization, right? You're the only person that can do that. Like, I hired people as the organization, as the customer. Like, I want the people to be focused on doing those things, not the staring at a screen for 8 hours a day, clicking the same button over and over again, or like you said, reading a 30-page report, and really all that I need is just the 5 IP addresses that come from it, so I can see if I'm affected, right? Those are not fun. So yeah, that's a big part of this transformation that I think as an industry, right, we're trying to get there. We're seeing these problems, and unfortunately, in some cases, right, we're still dealing with these problems, and that's where I hope our organizations can help our customers sort of eliminate that toil that we've been talking about.
Right. So, I mean, it keeps me a thought thinking of this and like detection engineering. And for 25 years, I mean, with Snort and AV and Yara and EDR and how we create detection rules of looking for atomic things, even just beyond indicators. Hey, I'm looking for these artifacts in a binary. Now I've got an AV EDR signature. I'm looking for these artifacts in network traffic. Now I've got a next gen firewall Snort Zeek signature. Or these artifacts and logs, and I've got a YARA-L signature, and that's one tool to automate, but that automates something I already understand. Where do you see like analytics and going towards UEBA and how that's evolving to go find, like I said, the net new stuff is, we're not really talking about vulnerability here, but I mean, there's always the young professionals. Oh, I want to get into red teaming and I want to find O-days, right? And even that's finding something net new, is how do we go to analytics or UEBA to find net new attacks, net new threat actors or campaigns?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a challenge, right? Understanding that UABA especially is can be very challenging to analyze large amounts of data and make meaningful predictions from that data. We talked about false positives earlier, right? That can be another huge source of false positives, but it can also be super helpful. So I think there's still a challenge there, and I know Netenrich is working on some things with UABA as well to add into the resolution intelligence platform. So I don't know if there's anything you can share with us on that, but I know it's fairly new. But yeah, I mean, I think there's still quite a bit of a challenge there. I think it's sort of like understanding the signatures, right? So the kind of the old model of signature-based detection that you mentioned, versus the new way of let's not have to write a signature for every possible combination of actions that somebody could possibly take in our environment. Let's instead focus on the behavior of what does it actually look like. So what is normal, what's our baseline, and then what does it look like when somebody deviates from that baseline. Understanding more of the behavior and not so much the nitty gritty details of like it was this file or this particular whatever binary, like you said. I think that's the challenge. I think we're getting there as an industry. I've seen some pretty good UEBA. But even that stuff can still generate, like we talked about, those false positives, where you set off all the alarms, right? The firefighting you mentioned, all the fire alarms go off, and it's like, oh well, that was just I was just doing my job. Like no, yeah, I totally meant to do that. I definitely wanted to share that.
I will say, like, my own research team generates the bulk of the UEBA alerts, but in fairness, it's not really a false positive, right? Because
Right.
it is noticing attack traffic that really is attack traffic against synthetic targets or us testing our rules. It's known behavior. There's just no business impact to it, or I mean,
Right.
the business impact positive. We're creating a better product, right? But it's always somebody like me that's probably the biggest source of detections if you're not careful. But it's also somebody like me you don't want to whitelist either, because
Right.
if you go to nation states target, right? People in business email compromise and that kind of stuff are going to target my CEO and CFO, right? Nation states are going to target somebody like me who's got admin privileges.
Yeah.
Which kind of is the thing that I am excited about now that, with data normalization, we can really do with UEBA is when you think about how the Tenables and the Qualys and the Rapid7 and OpenVASs of the world, it's fundamentally the same product it's been for 20 years. Scan the internet, look at banners or other signatures, find vulnerabilities. And attackers use that for initial access, sure, or smash and grab, SQL injection, database theft type of stuff. But the modern attacker, the asset isn't the infrastructure, the asset is the identity, right? It's not the path to the directory or the controller that the attacker cares about. It's the path to domain admin. Because once I have domain admin, it doesn't matter where I'm sitting in an enterprise. I'm firing off PowerShell everywhere, deploying ransomware, you're done, right? From anywhere in the enterprise, I've got domain admin. It's game, set, match. Then they'll do infrastructure-based stuff, but they have the permission to do it. So I said, having that balance of behavior that's normalized, you can see better deviations from the norm, but also just mapping, instead of like the number of hops to your critical physical asset, which doesn't really exist in a increasingly cloud world. It's how many hops are you away from domain admin, right? Yeah, initial access starts getting you to some privilege, but then it's a path to domain admin to where it's game over, or at least enough privilege to maybe you just want to, you're a large tech company where your source code was just put on GitHub yesterday from the time of this recording, right? That's all permission-based stuff. By the time you get to the resource, you have what you need to execute the attack. The attacker isn't going through the infrastructure and doing network attacks the way they used to with lateral movement, because it's just federated identity. Now, that's the world. Don't have good tools yet to map things in the same way that Rapid7 or Tenable or OpenVAS or all of these tools that we're required to use for compliance reasons, but are basically the same thing they've been for 20 years. Kind of noisy, not value, don't really solve the fundamental problem, because we're talking about software supply chain and software bill of materials, because, well, it's more than just OS and major application provided patches now. Now you've got to do updates of your GitHub software libraries or Node.js, MPI, or whatever it is, like
whatever third party you happen to be using.
And that's the world we're in right now. So it's we've got some gaps and lots of data, to work with, and at least it's cleaner data to where we can start trying to solve some of those problems. And like I said, we didn't even really get into software supply chain, which is its own special hell. But everything is kind of a special hell for us. It's just sucking at greater scale and volume than it ever has, which goes to our unlimited job security, which means I'm never going to be able to retire.
That's right.
So let's bring this, kind of wrap it around to a less cynical note, because, I want to hopefully produce people that aren't entirely whiskey swilling misanthropes. Maybe just a little miasma than misanthrope of. So how are we positively, working together to impact enterprise and SMB business? Like, what are we doing to make life better?
Yeah. Well, and it actually kind of ties to all the different things that you were just talking about. So one of the things that we do here at SADA is we firmly believe that security is a big word, right? It's not just about security operations. It's not just about identity. It's not just about posture management. It's not just about a firewall or whatever different tool or technology you happen to be using. So one of the things that we do is we walk through what we call our cloud confidence program. So our cloud security confidence program. And what we do is we walk through all of these different aspects with our customers. So we talk about things like security operations, CSPM, firewalls, identity, zero trust, all of these different aspects of security that you need as an organization in order to be confident in your environment, which is ultimately what you're tasked with as a CISO, right? Reducing risk. You want to feel confident that you're doing all the right things. And so security operations and all the stuff that we've been talking about is really just one small piece of that overall program, there are a ton of different areas. You mentioned some of them as well, which is I was glad you brought that up. But so I think that's kind of a really good way to wrap this up, is to talk about that and what we do. And like I said, getting to that understanding of the entirety of my security program. What does the whole thing look like? What are my risks? What are my highest priority areas that I need to go and fix? And maybe that is security operations. Oftentimes it is, which is why I think we talk about it so much. But having the total picture is super important. And so I would love for any of our customers, anybody that's listening to this, come and ask us about that. I'm happy to go more in detail and talk about it more in depth. But I think that is something that we've seen a ton of success with. Again, not just in security operations and transforming and modernizing all the things we've been talking about, reducing toil, but applying some of those same methods and some of those same practices to other areas of security as well, to achieve that total transformation. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is make the business more successful. So I'll end with that.
Well, no, I think that's exactly right. I mean, the one thing we have to do is like, what are the 5 biggest fires I need to fight right now? But also get to what are the 5 most important things I can do to prevent the most likely fires from happening in the first place, to avoid the world where my data center is burning down for those environments that still have a data center. So it's really like, not just preventing the fires or fighting the fires quicker. It's getting to, how can I make things better? How can we increase the lifespan of a CISO beyond 24 months? The one thing I joke with my boss is the one thing I've not done in my career is be a CISO. I'm willing to be the post-breach CISO. Come in when the checkbook's open, do all the transformative stuff, hang out for 24 months. I've accomplished all I set out to do, and then move, before something bad happens again, or the checkbooks close and kind of organizational inertia sets in, because otherwise you're the throat to choke. It's none of us get fired for, absent just misconduct, right? A breach happens, the CISO gets fired,
Right.
So how does that person last a little bit more than 24 months? Because that's the person making the buying decision.
Absolutely.
So with that, I want to thank you, John, for your time. I think that, covered a lot of great ground here. For those who are interested in what we're talking about, both our organizations will be at RSA, so come find us. Happy to talk. Speaking of whiskey swilling misanthropes, we'll be present for Fear and Loathing in San Francisco. That is RSA. Next week. This airs the week before RSA, so come find us. We'll be happy to talk about our respective solutions. So that again, thanks, John, for joining us. You've been listening to the Netenrich Death Labs podcast, air every other Wednesday. So we'll be back again in 2 weeks from some more threat research content. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you, John, and for SADA Systems for being part of us this week.
Absolutely. Thanks, John.